Assalamualaikum, hi baby. So we have a very special guest at the BeauStories office today, and I would love for you guys to meet her. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Emellia Shariff and I am the managing partner of Speak Up Malaysia.
So what is it do you do at Speak Up Malaysia?
Speak Up Malaysia is basically a boutique consultancy firm, and we do work around the idea of creating an ethical workplace.
Okay.
So we focus on things like eliminating harassment and sexual harassment. We do campaigns to build relationship, establish trust, and a lot of engagement with employees, managers, stakeholders and things like that. The idea is to convert the workplace from a toxic one to a healthy, productive, inclusive workplace for everyone.
Okay, so that's amazing. How long have you been doing this?
Personally, I've been doing this for a long time, for the past 5 years, but Speak Up Malaysia as an organization is pretty new. We incepted it earlier this year.
Okay, cool. So what exactly are you doing here at the BeauStories office today?
We are here to talk about microaggressions.
Yes. So can you tell me a little bit what is microaggression?
Microaggression is a type of violence against women. Technically not just women, because microaggression can happen on the basis of gender, race, religion and many others. But the focus today is on women. So microaggression happens when someone basically does something, either an act, a conduct, a remark that has a subtle hint of sexism.
Okay.
We used to live in a world where people can afford to be outrightly sexist, or they can outrightly say women belong in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But right now, as the world progresses and we live in a civilization where it is unacceptable to say things like that, unfortunately though, remnants of sexist ideas and mentalities still exist, and they come out and they materialize right now in a more subtle and insidious way, and that is what we call microaggression.
Okay, so can you give me a few types of microaggressions?
The most common one is when someone expect you to do something based on the idea of a traditional gender role.
Okay.
So from the point in which a woman was born up until she dies, there's always different parts of her life where people expect her to do something. The idea is tasks and responsibilities are assigned based on the expected gender. So she must be good at something because she's a woman. So like in school, we see this a lot happening when people are electing for presidents, vice presidents, and more often than not, women or the girls in school will be only elected as a secretary, or the highest it could go is a vice president.
That's true.
When you go to the workplace, it's the same thing. When you work in a small company and someone has to be in charge of getting coffee for a meeting, for example, more often than not, you expect a woman to do that.
That's
because
true.
you associate this idea of women, kitchen, coffee. So you sort of like make that connection and expect her to do that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Have you personally faced this type of microaggression?
Yes, I have. I was just telling you the story before this about how when I started working, because I was expected to bring coffee for everyone. People thought I was a coffee lady and not a lawyer.
Yeah, that's terrible. She is an amazing lawyer, just by the way, guys. Not a coffee lady.
Not a coffee lady.
No, zero. Okay. So what's another type of microaggression that you can give us?
Another type of microaggression happens when people mansplain something. So mansplaining is a situation where a man explains something to a woman who knows that topic way better than that man who was explaining it to her. We call that mansplaining. So this is bad because you live on the assumption that women have a lack of knowledge, or they must not know that much, or men must know better. I'm a man, I must know better than her. So that happens, and you basically diminishes the intellect of a woman.
Okay, so what's an example of mansplaining that you see quite rampant currently?
Well, we see a lot of mansplaining happen on social media. I think I've seen this post where this woman was talking about her reproductive health. She was talking about basically her uterus and her vagina, and can I say that?
Yeah.
And then a man comes and explains to her, well, basically your uterus is, and obviously everyone's like, no uterus, no opinion. And we also have seen situation where women a woman who is an expert on a particular field talk about an issue, create a thread on Twitter, and then there comes a man and be like, well, but you know what, or do you know that? You know, we see that happening quite a lot.
That's true, yeah. So what are like certain tips that you think that we as women can do to stop mansplaining?
The first thing you gotta decide is how polite you want to be about the situation. If you want to be really polite, you can wait until this person, you know, is done mansplaining to you, and you can say, actually, thank you for that, sir, but you know, I actually already know all of that because I'm the expert of the field. Or if you know, if you're in a rush, you don't want to wait for this, really, you don't have to. You can just interject and tell them, like, actually, what you're doing is you're mansplaining this to me. I know this better than you. Or, you know, the point is point it out so that they know that what they're doing is that they're mansplaining it to you. Don't let them get away with it.
That's true. Yeah, we don't let men do anything. No, I'm joking. Okay, what's another type of microaggression?
Another common one is when people demonize women's emotions. So a lot of the times when women express something with passion or speak up on an issue that they really care about, people will just dismiss them as being emotional. And we see this happen so many times. And that's bad because I think people just think having emotion is a bad thing. Without realizing that not having emotion makes you a non-human. But somehow people always associate being emotional to women, and therefore it is bad, which is why people always say, oh, a leader shouldn't be emotional. So obviously that's bad, that's demeaning, and that dismisses whatever a person is trying to say simply because they have emotions about the issue. And I tell this to a lot of people, next time you want to call a woman emotional, you should change it to this person is emotionally intelligent.
True. Correct. Do you have an example of when a woman is being emotional? Within their own right, of course. Yes.
I think we have seen comments on Twitter about you know, when Greta Thunberg was talking about the environment and climate crisis, people just call her an angry girl.
That's true.
Or when you see politicians, AOC. AOC gives a lot of passionate speeches, and people just dismiss her and say, she's just an angry lady.
She's so
you know,
good.
she's
I love
really
her so
good.
much,
We have like our fair share of really good, assertive women in Malaysia as well, and in like within the privacy of boardrooms and different companies in this country. I'm pretty sure a lot of Malaysian women face the same thing.
That's true. Okay, so like moving on from being emotional, what's another common microaggression that you think we should fix in Malaysia?
Misgendering is very common. Misgendering happens when someone assumes your gender based on your physical attributes. So for example, they see someone, let's say they see me wearing earrings, and people assume, oh, she's a lady, you know. We have to acknowledge as a society that we live in a world where people should have the freedom to decide their gender identity. And a person's gender identity is different, or might be different than the gender that is assigned to them at birth. So we need to first acknowledge that, and after we acknowledge that, then we have to be sensitive about the way you address someone. So don't assume their gender just because you think they look like a woman.
That's true. Okay, so how do you go about not misgendering a person? So do you ask the person what's their preferred pronouns, or like is there like a way to do it in which it wouldn't offend the other person?
Okay, I think a better way to do it is to always use gender-neutral pronouns. So for example, don't use he or she. You can refer to this person as they instead. Or if you're speaking in Bahasa Malaysia, it's a lot easier. You can just say dia or kamu, or, you know, it's a lot easier. So the most preferred method, I think, is to use a gender-neutral pronoun. If you are engaging with this person in a conversation, then you can just ask in a polite way, can I know what is your preferred pronoun? Or in a less formal context, you can say, how do I address you? So there's a lot of ways to do it, but I think as long as you do it in a way that is respectful and in a way that is polite, people will be more than willing to tell you how to address them.
That's true. Okay, so what is the last type of microaggression that we will be talking about today?
Okay, the final type is something we call backhanded compliment. A backhanded compliment exists when someone tries to give you a compliment, or they think they're giving you a compliment, but really they're insulting you.
Yeah. So how does that work? What are a few examples of backhanded compliments?
I think one of the most common I've seen is when people want to give comment based on someone's appearance.
Yeah.
Most common when someone lose weight, or when someone used to have an acne problem and they no longer have it. People will be like, oh my god, you lost weight, you look so good.
Yes.
They think it's a compliment, but what they're really saying, you look really bad before. Thank God you lose weight. You know?
That's true, yeah.
So that's why it's a backhanded compliment. My advice is to never make comment about someone's body or weight, because really you don't have to.
That's true.
There's so
really
many
matter,
other interesting topic that you could actually talk about and
Yeah.
point out, you know. So that is a very common backhanded compliment.
Yeah. So like, how exactly do you deal with backhanded compliments, do you think?
I guess it really depends
Yeah.
on what is a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
Like when I was working, there used to be a situation where, you know, you enter a meeting room full of men, and they always make a comment about your femininity, or the fact that you're a woman, or your sexual appeal, and they think they're giving you a compliment.
Yeah.
The most common one is people will say things like, oh, Emilia, dah kahwin ke belum? Saya masih bujang 3. You know? And they think they are telling you like, oh, you're good looking, you're so good looking, I might consider you to be my second wife. You know, they think it's a compliment, but really it's not. And I think that's very common. And the way I used to deal with that is I usually will laugh and say something really stern, so that you don't come across, you know, too angry about it. So I would usually say, oh no, thank you, I would rather not get married at all. You know, something like that. Or someone tells you like, oh, you look good. Oh, you've lost so much weight. You look really good. And you can say something like, oh, I look good before this. You know?
Yeah, that's true. So how do you think microaggressions has affected us as a society?
When we talk about microaggression, for sure it is not as serious as issues like rape or sexual assault. But to say that microaggression is not a serious problem would be inaccurate as well.
True,
because microaggression affects people on a day-to-day basis. It dehumanizes them, it degrades them, it dismisses their abilities, their intellect as a person. So we have to come to the realization that microaggression is bad because it affects a person. It affects how they view themselves, it affects their status in society, it affects their mental health. And you know, imagine living in an environment where people constantly pass you remarks and do things that tantamount to microaggression. That would be a pretty stressful situation to be in, and for sure it will affect how productive you are at the workplace, for example, or how supportive you can be as a mother, as a girlfriend, as a wife, as a friend to others. Because ultimately it degrades someone. You know, you don't want to. When you do that, it really affects you know, the ability to do what they're supposed to do. So that's why it's a really bad thing.
Interesting. So how do you think? What are the ways for us to become better as a society to stop microaggression?
The first thing is educate yourself. So read up on microaggression. Read up on women issues in your country. Look up, you know, issues like harassment. Look up issues like sexual assault, violence against women. Read up and educate yourself. It is not women's responsibilities to educate men and everyone else about this issue, because women's issues are national issues.
That's true.
They're issues of a national importance. So if you're part of that country, you should educate yourself about issues happening in that country, and try and regulate your behavior so that you don't do these things, and understand that at the core of it is offensive and you shouldn't be offending anyone.
True.
The second thing is, let's say, of course, we're not perfect. We're human beings. Sometimes we ended up making a remark that is microaggression. We ended up, you know, offending someone. The best thing to do is, when people point it out to you, when they call you out, just take a step back, don't be defensive, and think about it. And say, I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting me know. I will think about it and I will reflect. And that is the best way to deal with it.
That's true. So do you think like microaggression, unlike other forms of violence towards women, is something that is more commonplace? So you can definitely say that I've never sexually assaulted another person, but you can't say definitively that you've never done a microaggression.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Because like I said, sometimes it's because of the way we were raised in a society, the things that we pick up from our parents, from our school teachers, from our friends, and we ended up saying a remark that we thought was a joke or we were just trying to be funny and ended up it, offend someone. So I think for sure we have, because we are all learning here. I for sure have offended someone with a comment too.
Yeah.
So just learn from it and do better.
That's true. Okay, so that is all for today. That's all the time that we have. So I would like to thank Emellia for coming here today. It was so sweet of you to come and teach us about microaggressions.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we hope all of you learned something. If you guys want to learn more about violence against women and how to stop it, you guys can follow Emellia Shariff. She does a lot of work regarding this, so that'd be amazing. So yes, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much to
Thank you.
Emellia.
Bye. See you.
Bye.